The Molly English, welcome to
Thank
the
you.
Brook Hill podcast.
Thanks for
Olivia,
having
can
me.
we get a little cheer for yes, listen to that.
I didn't know there were so many people in this room.
This is filmed in front of a live audience.
Amazing.
This is so much fun. Molly, thank you for being here
Yeah,
and
I'm
just
excited.
hanging out today on the Brook Hill podcast. Wanted to catch up with you. I know last summer was your last summer here at
Yeah.
camp. How long were you a camper? Run us through
So-
your lineage here at Brook Hill.
Right. The backstory.
The backstory. Yes.
So I was a camper the second summer I could be, so going into fourth grade.
Okay.
And then 6 years a camper, started JCing right after my graduate year,
Okay.
JC'd for 2 summers, and then went on all summer staff as an AC,
Okay.
and was on all summer staff for 4 years, 4 summers.
One of the first memories I vividly have of you
I'm
is, remember you were on kitchen staff, and I think it was Emma, right? Emma Manser.
Right, yeah.
Who's like, David, come here. You got to know this girl.
Was this on a Friday night?
It was possibly on a Friday night. Y'all were eating on the picnic tables out on the porch. Do you remember that? And she was like, David,
Yeah.
you have to know this girl.
I
and,
do.
And I made a joke about your brother because he was a one-hit wonder. And obviously, I
it was a
loved
running
your
joke
brother.
for a while.
It was. And I loved your brother. There was no animosity or anything towards him. I absolutely loved him. He was like the coolest cat ever,
Yeah.
but I, the joke was like, we don't need Molly to be here for a year. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that it was just a joke.
Yeah.
But, I know the counselors were always like, you got to know her.
Yeah.
She was incredible. So,
That's so funny.
obviously they saw your potential. And, obviously as a JC, you worked hard or you did some things that stood out to them. What got you here in the fourth grade? Was it friends? Like what?
So
there's always some connection.
Right. Yeah, because I feel like to be a camper at Brook Hill, it's usually someone who went and they invite you, and that's kind of the gate to get into Brook Hill, or it was like back when I was younger. Now there's definitely more avenues people find out about Brook Hill, but the Greers actually went to camp.
Of course.
And so my mom and Miss Shannon, the 2 moms are friends. And so
Okay.
I think that, to my knowledge, was my connection. And so invited me, went to camp, and just never stopped coming. I think I went with them my first year, and then I just kept coming back and inviting people and going with friends. And I always had a friend when I came. I wasn't a solo camper, but definitely met a lot of people along my camper journey. Never was a continuous, I'm going to go week 3. I definitely hopped around.
Okay,
so
you're a week hopper.
I was a week hopper. I was like, week 2 this year. Week 7 next year. So
I love that.
I didn't have a week squad, but
Yeah.
I was just kind of did my thing when I came. I always met people and had fun. So
The Greers were pros. I mean, you had Kendall Greer, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
You got Piper and Christian and Grayson.
it's all studs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are the tennis family. They're definitely my tennis family. They're the ones
They are.
got me in the Little Rock tennis scene.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah.
I'm not shocked about that.
Absolutely. So that's incredible. So as a camper, so you and Kendall, I guess, were y'all same age? Y'all came as campers together?
Yeah, I want to say that we didn't even go to the same bunkhouse. I think we just went to camp the same week,
Okay.
and I went with Greer Ripley. That was my friend.
Oh.
Do you remember the Ripley?
Yes.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that was my friend.
Yes.
My first summer, and she's
Okay.
older than me,
Yeah,
so she had already
Susanna,
been.
Greer,
Yeah.
Pauline.
Yes.
Summy. Okay, yeah, don't let me miss. So their dad is like, I buy my slushies from him at church. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. He works a little cafe.
Yep, he's my kiosk guy.
He's consistent.
And we
He's
have
done
the
that
same.
for years.
We have the same conversation every time. How are the girls? Good. He tells me some story. You know what I'm saying? It's like our way to connect. I feel like it's a
Yes.
camper.
Love Randy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, so Greer and I went together, and then the Greers, I think, were just we would ride with them, kind of our shuttle to
Okay.
camp together,
I love
because
it.
our moms would get us all packed in our trunks, and then we'd get in cars, maybe go to lunch before. But I was in the Phillies my first summer with Hannah
Phillies.
Allen.
With Hannah.
Yeah.
Hannah Allen was the best.
It was
I've got to track her down and have her on this podcast.
I mean, she's amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
She's everything. Yeah. She is amazing. Okay, so Hannah Allen was your first counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remember? Okay, and then what did you end up being? You were Palomino, right?
I was Palomino.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Hannah Allen, were you ever a camper in the Palominos?
I was only in the Palominos week 8 of my AC summer.
Okay.
So right before camp ended, and then like the next summer I took over.
Okay.
But I think that the Palominos I was more drawn to because I just love Mackenzie Tryon.
Yes. So last week as an AC, you had her.
Sentimental
as a
connection,
camper.
as a camper.
Yeah.
But were you asking me to name?
Yeah.
Try and name them?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I know I was a Philly first year, and then I was a Chestnut.
With who? Do you remember? So Philly with Hannah Allen.
Chestnut with, I might mess it up.
Oh, no. That's okay. Just try it. Just
Shelby?
guess. Shelby? Okay.
Do you remember a Shelby?
Yes.
Because I can see her face in my brain so vividly.
Yes. It could be Shelby Baldridge now.
Probably.
Okay. Who's at the house in Fayetteville?
I trust that.
Okay. We'll go with that.
And then I was a Philly again, but with not Hannah Allen. I'm so bad.
This is really bad.
I do know who I graduated out of the cabin with.
Okay, let's go. Let's just go to what you do know. Let's just skip to what you do know.
I graduated out of the Galcinos with Jessa Wilson.
Oh, let's go.
And that I know for a fact.
Okay.
I'm confident.
I love that.
Confident in it.
I love that. Oh, Jessa is a fun story. I'll have to tell it when she is on here.
Oh, perfect.
So I love it.
Can't wait to listen.
Any camper any camper stories that you can remember, like fun or any connections that you can remember?
Yeah. I have one story. It's the most random story. It's short, but it meant like the world to me for some reason.
Okay.
But it was about a JC.
Okay.
And her name was Hannah. That's all I know.
Okay.
Hannah the JC.
Cool.
Definitely somebody who I only met that week, never saw her again. But I remember she had this long, curly blonde hair, like Rapunzel length long. And also she would just kind of like, she incorporated her style into wearing her red t-shirt in some way. I can't explain it, but she was just herself all the time. And I remember being in the shower house, we were brushing our teeth, and she walks in a unicorn, like Walmart onesie, like a pajama outfit.
Okay.
And I just remember being like, she doesn't care what anyone thinks, and being like so impressed by somebody just like owning who they are.
Yes.
And not caring, but also not in like a boastful way. Like she just was herself, and that was what it was. And she was so kind to everyone. And I just remember like leaving that week and knowing that counselors at Brookhill were all going to be themselves all the time, and they were so comfortable in their own skin. And that was something that I don't think I was as a camper, and just like as a young girl. And just like leaving camp and always feeling refreshed to like be myself, because they all did that all the time in like their own little like ways, in small ways, but big to a camper who probably is constantly trying to fit in like a box, or constantly trying to like, oh, this is like how everyone dresses, so I'm going to dress. But then this one, Hannah was like, I'm going to wear what I like. And it was just like, it just stuck out a lot. I think that whole week it did. Just little moments where she just owned her own personality.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think everyone's asking, who am I and where am I going?
Yeah.
And we're always looking at other people and asking, who are they and where are they going?
Right.
And, how can that help me? And, I like what you said. She was her own self. And I think there's a fine line, because you can be your own self where you're trying to like make a statement, right?
And you're like, this is who I am. I'm putting my fist down.
And I'm angry at all you. And hey, you do you. But I think there's a way that you can be yourself that just draws people in, where she was totally different than everybody else.
Great way to say that.
Subtly herself. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm not trying to make a statement. I'm just being me.
Yeah.
Who God's called me to be.
Exactly.
And I think that's contagious. And I think that that's the gospel. If we can be who Jesus is in us and designed us to be.
Yep.
And not in this angry way, because then obviously that's not going to draw people to the gospel.
Yeah.
But I think that's what you learned.
Yeah.
That's what your team around you, the other girls, counselors, Kendall's a good example.
Yeah.
The Greers, all those people just being themselves.
And campers are so drawn to counselors who, no matter what your personality's like, if you're just like walking confidently in the gifts like God gave you, like campers are drawn to you. Like, honestly, I think there is a stigma behind like, oh, you have to be the most like outgoing or loud or like the counselor who's being the goofiest. And those things are awesome. Like, we need those counselors at summer camp. We want to be goofy and fun and loud. But I even think of like Emily McMaster.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so many campers are drawn to her. And she is just one of the most peaceful people I've ever been around. But because she's walking in that confidently, like, campers are drawn to it. And so, yeah.
I love it. I think you can smell fake a mile away. They're trying to be something, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying. It's just a fake attitude. You can just see people, whether it was in school growing up, whether it was whatever, and it's like, okay, you're trying to be something, and you're not that thing that you're trying to be, because you can't be something you're not genuinely.
Yeah, I think it also just makes it harder to connect when you're trying to fill a box that you don't think you fit in, but you like want to.
Right. Because you're insecure.
Yeah.
It's funny how who God has created us to be is actually perfect for us, but we're scared of it.
Yeah.
Because it's different than other people. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's you. I mean, there's no one like Molly,
Yeah.
And I say that in a good way.
No, but yeah.
And when you were comfortable being yourself, and I don't know if camp was one of the first times you were, I don't know if it was at school when you did, but when you decided to be Molly, I think that's what Emma Manser recognized in you when she's like, David, you got to know her. She'd be a great camp counselor here.
Yeah,
and that's just because you were you. And so I don't know when that happened for you or who helped you. Who do you feel like helped you? Or was it just you and the Lord? Like,
no,
how did you get there?
That's a good question.
How did you get to be Molly?
How did I become myself?
Let
me tell you.
Great question.
I'm like racking my brain now. I'm like, let's see what the process to that was, because I think it definitely like is a process that's ongoing. And
yes,
all of those things.
Great point.
And
great point. I don't think you ever arrive. I mean, even the David today may not be the David you knew 5 years ago when you started staff in 2018.
Right. Because I think there was a level that when I was at JC, obviously the leadership you're given makes you kind of step up and be like, okay, like campers are looking to me. And I thought the world of JCs when I was a camper. Like, I always was like, they're so cool. Like, they were just, I didn't see the difference in the different tiers of counselors. I didn't really understand what that was when I was a camper. So kind of keeping that in the back of my brain when I was a JC and being like, okay, these campers like see a red t-shirt and that's all they care about. So I kind of just like walked in that when I was a JC a lot. And I think that pushed me to kind of, for the campers, like, I'm going to be myself. Like, I want so desperately them to know it's okay for them to be themselves. And so I'm going to almost like push myself to do the same. This is kind of going off on a different limb, but I think being on
podcast.
Staff, it is my podcast. So I'm going to take the limb.
There you go.
But I think being on staff in general, JC and all summer, campers just like ingrained this accountability in me of like, I owe it to them. And obviously not in like a above the Lord way, like Jesus number. I'm not like, campers, I must like do my life so that they can
follow
be proud
me as
of
I
me.
follow Brooke Hill.
Right.
Oh, wait, no, that's not what it's supposed to be.
Wait, backtrack a little.
Yeah.
But there was this level of accountability that I felt of like, I know how much counselors meant to me. And like when I was a camper, I like met the Lord. I didn't meet the Lord at Brooke Hill, but I definitely learned what it looked like to like have fun and be a Christian, and almost just so many great role models when you're a camper, or or like so many great role models are counselors when you're a camper, that I almost felt this like these campers are looking up to me, and so I almost owe it to them to like put my best foot forward when I am leading them. And that kind of bled into like, okay, well now in my school years, like they're following me on social media and like I could see them anywhere. And it was almost this like built in, like I want to be a good like role model for them. And I obviously don't expect perfection out of your counselors because they're not perfect. And I think having like a healthy relationship with that is super important. But also like I owe it to them to like walk confidently in who God created me to be, because I want them to do the same. Like I can't put an expectation on a camper that I'm not also expecting myself to do. Like,
so good.
If I'm going to be like, okay, like God gave you so many awesome gifts, like you are unique, like things that I would tell my girls all the time. Like if I'm not also telling myself that and believing it, like I shouldn't be saying it to them.
That's so good.
And so, yeah.
And I don't think all leaders think that way, but I think that's what makes you a high level leader. Because y'all remember me saying, like, when we talk leadership, that hypocrisy is the death of leadership.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's always crazy to me when a leader will say one thing and then go in the opposite direction, you know, and for campers and kids or whatever, it's, you know, it's like you've got to be consistent. Your character has to be high and you have to practice what you preach,
right?
You know, with your character and everything like that. I think that is everything. Do you think some of that has bled over into the leader that you are at your job? You know, I know you're working a job right now. I know you're working on your master's, or like a double master's, not just a single master's, but that I expect nothing less from the Molly
two-time
English.
Master.
That's exactly right. Yes. So do you think that bleeds over even into your college life, into your dating life, you know, into all of that? How do you feel like it's like, okay, I am being conscious of how people are seeing me, and am I being consistent? Mm-hmm. You know, I love the Craig Rochelle quote where he said, "Great leaders do consistently what average leaders do occasionally."
Right.
You know, so do you feel like that has really?
Yeah, I think like 100%. I think a lot of things I've learned at camp and at Brick Hill, just lessons like the Lord's like kind of revealed to me, have been things that I needed in other areas of my life, like not just at camp. And I actually did K-Life all of college, so it's like kind of like Young Life, but I think it's with Kanakuk, not sure. But I had a small group of girls who graduated when I graduated college, so I got to be with them from freshman year to senior year, and me through college, them through high school. And I think they were kind of like my version of like having campers all year round, where like obviously they're like some of my good friends now, which is so special. But I think that how I was a leader at camp bled into how I led them. I think how I led at camp bled into the like almost work ethic I have everywhere. Like the work ethic I have at the job I work at now, of like see the need. Like see the need, I use it all the time. I'm like, why would you not do that? It's
Do people ask you, like, why'd you do that?
Well, I think sometimes people are like, you don't have to. I'm like, but what? I'm like, why wouldn't you?
But it
There's
needs to be.
There's like a need. I'm like, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
We're getting paid. We're on this team.
Yeah.
This needs to be done.
Right.
Why would I wait to be told?
Why would I? Exactly. I think that's one thing that stuck out the most about myself, is just that I am able to take initiative really well and confidently. And I think being an LC, honestly, push that even farther, because there were so many things that it's like, okay, just get it done. Like, don't even run it by us. If you think it needs to be done, we trust you, do it. And so I think that instilled a lot of confidence of like, oh yeah, I do like know what needs to be done and I know how to do it.
Right.
So yeah.
I just don't know that a lot of people think anymore. You know, I don't know. Okay, let me say it like this. It's not that people have stopped thinking. I think people aren't being pushed to think. And I think, you know, as a lead counselor, we were pushing you, Molly, think about this.
Right.
If you know how to solve it, you know it's a no-brainer. It's what we want you to solve.
Right.
Why wouldn't you just solve it?
Just go
without
ahead.
even asking?
Yeah.
Because it's a no. You think this through. Is this something that you think, oh my gosh, David would want to know about? Then bring it to us. Basically, we were constantly teaching you think.
Yeah.
Think this through. And I feel like, I don't know if it's like the old movies where the granddad would sit the kid down, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
and be like, son, you need to think this through. But it was a culture of constantly giving them these examples and think this through. And I just don't know if we get that anymore.
Yeah. I definitely think lots of different sides of different, like lots of angles of different situations now, just because I can vividly think of sitting in an admin meeting and like you have a perspective and like Lindley has a perspective and Mike and Lisa and they're all great, but they're all so different. And so I remember like now when I approach situations, sometimes, this is embarrassing, sometimes I'm like, how would David think through this? I can almost be in your brain a little. I'm like, I think he would do this. And then I think he would probably think that's stupid. And then he would probably say this. And then I'm like, okay, if Lindley was here, what would she do? I'm like, right. She would for sure want this to happen, but she wouldn't give a rip about that. And I'm like, I'm like, in your like thought processes, like, I think it's really
I love that.
Interesting too. So yeah.
I love that. I think I love that. I think
he's like, whoa.
No,
creepy.
That's right. Well, it's always been a little Molly. So going back to the K-Life thing, I know the people who listen to this podcast, if anyone listens to more than one episode, which probably no one does, but if they did,
if you're out there,
they would hear me say, for those two people, this is for you, they would hear me say, build your own Brookhill, because that's what Hetty always said to us. And to me, you doing K-Life, even you working your job, and seeing the need, to me, that all goes to the build your own Brookhill, because our whole concept, right, is when you graduate here as a camper is go and be a light, right? It's like we're sending you out. It's like the Great Commission of Matthew, where Jesus said, go into all the world making disciples. And whether it's you at your job making see the need disciples, right? Or whether it's you at K-Life actually making disciples. Our goal at Brookhill has always been for our counselors, our campers, to go out and do what you did here.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, I don't know if you remember me saying this to you, but I know I've said it to staffs in the past, is don't let Brookhill be your greatest moment. Yeah. Let it be your first moment. It's the first time I was a great leader. It's the first time I discipled. Mm-hmm. But don't let it be the only time you discipled.
Yeah.
And so I love the K-Life that you did in college. And I love what you're doing, because that build your own Brookhill. I don't know if you ever seen it like that. Or no, you just just doing your thing.
Honestly, it makes total sense. I don't know if I've ever seen it that way, but now that I kind of am hearing what you're saying, I'm being reminded too of whenever I became head of Hill.
Yep.
The summer, was it 2020, I think? I just remember
that was such an easy summer.
Yeah, so easy. It really just
was so easy.
Just flew by,
It was so easy. It was so peaceful.
So restful.
Everywhere.
Honestly, were we even at summer camp?
No.
I don't know what was going on. But I don't know if you know this, but like prior to that summer, I, in my little Molly brain, never thought I would be like a leader on staff in like a high leader position, and not out of like, oh, I could never do it. Honestly, out of like, I love like supporting leaders.
Sure.
I love being like the secondhand man that's like, yeah, they said this. Let's get everyone on our page. Like, I'll help everyone do this thing. And so I remember when Maddie Lechtenberg was like going to be head of Phil, and I was just like, awesome. Like, I'll be such a good like support girl. Like, I'll be her go-to, like a great second hand. And then I was thinking like the next summer, like I just had kind of played it out in my brain, and I was just never going to be head of Phil. And I was content. I was like, that's fine.
Come on.
It wasn't in like I really want to do this way. It was just like, that's totally, I almost felt like, whatever, like I'll just be wherever they need me to be. And so when I was like asked to be head of Phil, I was terrified. I was like, no, like that's not what I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm supposed to support people that lead. And it just like makes me laugh now, because the Lord has done a number like in my heart, but also just like I learned I've learned so many things through being a leader at Brook Hill, whether that's like practical, actually how to lead, or like spiritual things the Lord's been like teaching me throughout the 2 summers that I just feel like I was kind of like asked to step up in leadership. And it's almost like I couldn't imagine not doing that, because with the challenges that it brought, like the Lord met me in them. And like I just like learned lessons that have been so valuable to like my entire walk with the Lord through those 2 summers that I just like can't even put into words if that wouldn't have happened. Like I don't think I would be as close to the Lord as I am, just because I was like so dependent on him those 2 summers, because I just never saw myself as that. And then I was like, okay, well, here I am. And like, I'm doing it. And almost like, okay, Lord, like, this is on you, because like you got me here. Like, I need you to step in and do your thing, because I don't know what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can see this, but you know, I think it's so important, you know, when people are trying to be something, right? I want to be the team captain of my team instead of the team wants you to be team captain, you know? Yeah. And I think when we try and promote ourselves, you know, I think there's some humbling that has to happen, whereas you humbled yourself and then you were promoted.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think God honors that heart. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't want to be a leader.
Right, yeah.
But it's like, okay, God, if you want me to lead, I will. If you want me to help leaders, I will. I just want to make a difference. That's my heart. I don't care about a title. But I think people pursue titles without pursuing leadership. And I think leadership isn't a title.
Yeah.
It's just being willing to be what the team needs.
Yeah.
And that heart will always make everyone go, I want Molly to be in charge because of her heart.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's a humble posture. And I think so many people are trying to get this status and look at me, because it's about them being the leader. It's about them achieving it. And leadership is never about that. Leadership is always about the people you're serving.
Yeah.
And I love that heart that you had. And I think that's what we recognized in you. It's crazy. That, you know, Molly wasn't like pushing to be, you know, like pushing other people down out of the way and look at me, you know? Right. And I think that's what God honored. And as a LC, you kept that same attitude, you know, where you were just like, hey, whatever you need us to do, whether, you know, Claudia, Ben, Andrew, and you were like, I'll do that or not do that. Whatever. And I think God is looking for those kinds of leaders.
Yeah, it created space for me to be like moldable, really like easily moldable. And like, I just remember when I was ahead of Hill, like there would be moments I would sit on my porch and I would be like, Lord, like I need you to help me like make my campers laugh today. I'd be like, I don't know what's going on. Like I just depended on him for everything, because I just felt so like at his like disposal, and not in a bad way, like honestly in a really vulnerable and like trusting way. But I just remember like that summer was like a turning point for me with my walk with the Lord, just because of how dependent I was on him for everything. Like when I say everything, like
you mean everything.
Everything. So yeah.
Do you have any like stories? Do you have any like, for instance, do you have anything where, I mean, that was a great one where you were like saying you were in your cabin, you're like, God, I need you to do this. Maybe with certain camper situations. Can you think of anything, even as an LC or whatever, where you're like, God, I can't have this conversation. Can you think of anything?
There is one thing. This was Claudia and I, like, this was our favorite moment of the entire summer, like of our LC summer, like when we. And
so just to describe this as you're thinking that through, LC is lead counselor.
Yes.
And that is someone who has typically been on staff all summer. This is their 4th or 5th summer. That's that's what it's been so far. Mm-hmm. And so typically you're around 21, 22 years old. Mm-hmm. And so you are, I mean, you've got admin, which is all of us full-timers. All of us old people. And then you've got the LCs. And then you've got the all-summer staff and everybody else underneath that. So you started last year. You started it. with a group of 4. This year it's a group of 6. You're basically like assistant camp directors. Okay. Yeah. And so and you and Claudia were pioneering this position. And so you couldn't look to previous LCs because there weren't any.
We didn't have that. We showed up for staff training. We're like, so, what do y'all want?
Yeah, so just to set the stage, these are pioneer women here who are like literally going where...
Just doing our thing.
Yes.
Going forward.
No other girls to look back on how to do this job. And so that, just to put that out there, just to set the scene for every, the thousands watching
the
across.
Millions.
Yeah, the millions watching
billions.
Across. Yes.
Yes, all listening and watching. But it was the 2-week, and it was a camp.
Which we've never had since 2008, so you had no idea what that was.
So we were just rolling with the punches.
We're setting the stage.
Theme of last summer was go with the flow.
Okay.
Step up and just go with the flow.
Which is what we talk about as leaders, is the greatest leaders are adaptable.
Yeah.
You have to have the ability to adapt to the situation.
Yeah.
If you get stuck in it only being one way, you can only lead when conditions are perfect.
That's true. Yeah. So honestly, great lesson we all got to learn last summer.
You're welcome.
Loved it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And it was during the camp out, the girls' camp out, or like the night where you make the dinners.
Yes.
The
Hobo dinners.
Why did I just say
you
hillbilly?
only did it, but yeah.
I only did it.
Something country, but you only did it once summer.
Yeah.
So
hobo dinners.
Yep.
And Lindley came to Claudia and I, like, probably that afternoon, maybe the day before, and was like, hey, girls, like, we just want you to give, like, a short little word when you're there. Just, prepare something. Just like a message you want to give them. Super vague. A message you want to give them. I'm like, okay, cool. So Claudia and I, like, also we don't have a ton of free time to just like sit down and think about a message we want to give them, So we're like kind of like spitballing things and kind of just like, yeah, let's say this, kind of throwing something together, like picking a verse, talking about maybe like things that we would want to hear as campers. Definitely like great, valuable lessons, but definitely thrown together. So we kind of get something written down. We go down there, and the guys had theirs the day before. So maybe we found this out probably like 2 or 3 days before it actually happened. But the guys came back and were like, oh my gosh, how did your little like Devo thing go? And they're like, it was awesome. Like, it was so long. We did a ministry time. Like, just kind of like started like hyping it up to be this like really big, powerful moment. And Claudia and I are sitting there listening. We're like, oh, that's so awesome. Like, we're so glad that happened. They leave. We're like, we got to go prepare more stuff. Like, we didn't do this right. So we're kind of like starting to be like, did we get led on to think this is less than what it is? Like, are we going to have like a 20-minute gap to fill and we've prepared like 5 minutes of talking? So we get down there and we're both like very obviously kind of like, we want this to be special, but we don't want to like we're not necessarily nervous in a way of like, oh no, we're talking in front of people. More just like, oh, we want it to be powerful and we don't feel confident in that right now. And so I remember Lindley pulled us aside and she was like, girls, like whatever you'll say out there is going to be amazing. She like prayed over us, just kind of just like hyped us up for like 5 minutes and was like, y'all got this. Like almost like in a way of like, I have so much confidence that y'all got this. And us being like, oh yeah, we got this, like kind of not even really knowing what we're going to say when we got there.
So what does that mean to you when a leader does that for you? I mean, do you think Lindley like launched you and just said, I believe in you? Like, what does that do when a high level leader tells you they believe in you?
I mean, it's powerful because I think there's a part of you, especially as a leader yourself, where you don't want to have like that doubt. Like you're almost like, I'm grown up past that. Like I have matured past, like I trust the Lord enough to not doubt that he would work. But like, that's just like human, like doubt. And so I think having someone like come and like confidently speak life into you that you like respect so much and that you also see as like a high level leader, like what you said, just is like a game changer for the moment.
So good.
Like you're like, oh yes, like I need to be reminded of, like, I agree with you, but it is so nice to hear that confidently spoken over me. So we go out there. Claudia and I think maybe I went first and Claudia went second, but I like blacked out. Like, I don't really remember what I said. I just remember at one point I had my notebook in my hand and I was like aggressively like talking and like pointing, and I was like it was just like a very powerful moment. Like,
come on.
I can't even really explain what took over. Like, the Holy Spirit took over, but like I can't explain how it felt, because I just remember walking away and also like thinking it was good, but also being like, okay, like that went better than I thought it would.
Didn't flop.
Yeah, that didn't flop. And I remember I thought Lindley had left. I thought she had like driven away, and she came up to me and Claudia after, and she was like, that is the best thing I've seen at camp in years.
Come on.
And I was like, that was not me. Like,
right.
It was so cool, because I had just felt like I also just hadn't like felt as prepared with the Lord as I wanted to, but God was just like, I don't care. Like,
yeah,
I'm going to take care of it.
But once again, that humble posture that you had, that God, I'm not good enough. I'm relying on you, right?
Yeah.
That humble posture promoted you. Yeah. God's like, I got you. That teachable attitude, right? God's like, I got you. And that's what I think he wants from us. I think that's so good. But then once again, you know, and I'm assuming like maybe one or two leaders will listen to this, because you look at Lindley, your leader, encouraging you before,
right,
and then coming up to you after and encouraging you. And that,
I mean, it was huge.
Means the world.
Yeah.
And as leaders, God, I think we can get so busy that we forget that we have the power to promote the people we're leading.
Yeah.
And if we just won't forget how important those words are to say, oh my gosh, that was so good. And what that does, you know, in the people that are working for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great lesson for you as a leader to know how it felt.
Yeah.
And then for you to turn around and be the camp counselor leader for someone at your job now, or you know, wherever your future holds. And so I don't know if you even recognized, you know, the power of that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I walked away and definitely was like, I don't know what just happened, but the Lord really like did something in me that got to benefit like the camp. And I just remember being like so humbled. Like, I think that's just a theme of me working at camp ever.
Yeah.
Is I'm constantly, even having girls look up to me, like being head of Hill and being the LC, and I told the group that's leading now, like the 3 girls, I was like, y'all are stepping into influence that y'all don't deserve. And like all of girls staff is going to look up to y'all so much and see you as this like just see you as such a high leader, and also just value your opinion and your like friendship and what you have to say. And when you have free time, if you spend it with them, like they're just like, especially first timers, like I remember Jensen Parker, like she hyped me up more than I ever deserved. And I was like, Jensen, chill. And she was like, blah, blah. And I'm like, I just don't deserve like the influence that the Lord's given me in these girls' lives, and just like the honor that is to.
So what did she do? Like, what did she say? Like, can you remember what she said to you? I mean, was she just like, you're the, she just went on and on. So this is a first year girl running a cabin. You're an LC over the cabin girls. Right. And she's just hanging on every word you're saying. Do you remember anything she said?
Well, at first she was really scared. Anytime I was around, she would be like kind of like, I would walk into her cabin and be like, hey, Chestnut's like super innocent. I have nothing to say to her. And she'd be like, hey, Molly, like, what do you need? And I'd be like, Jensen, nothing. Like, I'm just going to say, hey. She's like, okay. Yeah. And I'm like, bro, chill. And so first it took like kind of getting to the point of like, Jensen, like, I just want to hang out with you. Yep. And then I think just not even one sentence that she said to me, but more just like the friendship that she was excited to have with me. Like, and not that I'm like, whoa, how can anyone be excited to be my friend? Like, okay. Yeah, people can be excited to be my friend, but I didn't feel like I had done anything super spectacular for her to be that excited to be my friend. Like, I was like, I'm super excited to be your friend. Let's do it. But like, almost like, what did I do to get this in?
Well, she's been watching you for 4 years.
Which I forget about that.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, so if she had been doing this for about 4 years, you got to realize she's probably a graduate.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely knew her as a camper, and I love her so much. And so I was excited for her to be on staff. Just like a lot of first timers, I was excited to get to know, just because I had seen them be campers and BJCs and kind of like grow into senior counselors, which is just such a cool opportunity to get to watch someone grow into. But I think the biggest shock to me was just like the immediate like foot in the door you had with so many like incredible women that I was like, I just can't even pinpoint how I like got that, besides like my just one, the Lord, and two, just like the position that I was given.
Yep.
It's just like just like with the red t-shirt with campers, you automatically get this influence. Like being in leadership on staff, you automatically get this influence with like younger staffers that you could like corrupt within the first few weeks of camp, or you can take and like run with it and make it something even better.
Come on.
So,
well, yeah. It takes, I always say leadership takes years to build and a moment to tear down.
Yeah.
You know,
that's really true.
And you built that leadership, and it's obvious that you really watched over it the whole time. That you're like, I don't want to do anything to tear this down in these girls' lives.
Yeah.
And I love that about you. All right. So why did you, so I kind of hear why you became, you know, what you loved about being a camper. Why'd you become a counselor? Like what made you, Molly? Like, was there ever a moment as a graduate camper that you were like, peace, this was great? Or were you like, were you one of those that's like, no, I will wear the red t-shirt, you know, as a JC?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because every single summer after I would work, so I became a JC after my graduate year, I think out of, why not? Like, why not ride
You're
in?
Like, hey.
Like, kind of like, I love being a camper. I want to be a counselor.
Yep.
Like,
okay. So it wasn't a whole lot of prayer and thought and meditation and, you know, all this kind of stuff.
There was not that.
But it's just like, sure.
Comical, because after every summer, I always would tell Maggie Pinkston, it's my last summer. I literally.
You were one of those.
I was. I worked my first week and I said, I'll probably go back for like 1 week.
Yeah. And
then my second JC summer, I was like, okay, I'm going to work 3 in a row. If by my third one I want to come back for a fourth, then I'll ride in.
Okay. Did you do 3 in a row? You did? Yeah.
And I like cried at the end of the third one and I was like, I don't want to leave. And so I was like, I'll ride in.
Okay.
And then I was an AC. I was like, probably just be an AC. Was senior counselor? Probably will just be, I'll probably have done now. Headeville? Okay, it's my last year. LC, I like just kept.
So did you get at the end and like cry every time and go, okay, I'm not done, or what?
I think that I would get at the end and I'd be like, I'm done. And then I would have my year and the Lord would be like, you're not done. And I'd be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not done.
But it goes back to that heart. It goes back to your heart that you're just like, God, whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
God, whatever.
Whatever you want.
When I was head of Hill, I don't actually know if I've ever told you this, but.
Oh, and now we're just now saying this on the podcast.
So here we are. But it's great. It's a great thing. Yeah. So
Olivia Kirk, don't ever do this to me.
Buckle up. But my middle of my head of Hill summer, I was like super confident because usually like you're head of Hill and then you're kind of, you leave and you're done.
And then you're out of here.
And you're at it. You're peace out. And so in my middle of my head of Hill summer, I remember talking to Ben Brown and being like, and this is before Elsie had ever been mentioned.
This is before we threw it out there.
Before. Okay. And I said, Ben, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like the Lord's telling me I'm going to be back, but I'm not going to be in a cabin, but I'm not going to be in the kitchen, and I'm not going to be in the general store. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to be.
Wow.
Like, I literally knew so confidently. Like, I was like, I'm coming back to camp. Like, I know I'm coming back to camp, but I know I'm not going to be in my cabin. Like, I felt so much peace about not being in my cabin, and I felt so much peace about being somewhere else. But I was so confused about where I was going to be. And in the staff meeting that y'all threw it out there, I was sitting and I had my head down. And I remember Ben was like diagonal at the conference table, and y'all were like, we have this new position, blah, blah, blah. And I wouldn't look at him. I was like, no, I'm not looking. Because a part of me like didn't want to come back, but just felt like, okay, this is my last summer. So I was so thrown.
Right.
by the Lord being like, you're coming back.
But you knew it wasn't your last summer.
But I knew it wasn't. And when y'all said that, I was almost like, it doesn't even matter if I want to do whatever they're talking about. Like, I'm going to be doing it. It was almost like, I don't even care what the job is. Like, I will be here.
Right.
And honestly, all 4 of us, because that, like, during staff training, we all talked about it when we were LCs. And we all 4 had similar experiences of like, I'm coming back, but it's a fat question mark, like, of what it is going to be. And like, that's okay.
Right. I love that. I've been talking about this quite a bit to our staff. And one of the lines that I've been saying this summer is God dreams dreams for us that we don't even know to dream.
Yeah. It's so true.
And, if you would have told me I'd have been here all year at Brook Hill 10 years ago, that all I would do is work Brook Hill all year, I would have told you were crazy, but I didn't know that this was possible.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's so funny that God was preparing your heart before your head.
Yeah, he was.
Knew that there was a possibility. And you're like, there is no possibility, but I know that I'm not done. And I think, this is a great example, and just throw Brook Hill out of the picture, but this is a great example of our lives, of how God prepares us for what's next, even when we can't see what's next. He starts telling us what's next, and you're like, okay, I don't even know what that means. That's not even a thing, but it's like, but I think God is just looking for us to trust him.
Yeah, I even experienced that with grad school.
Okay. Explain.
Here we go. And so grad school, it's something all of college, I never one time thought I'd go to grad school. I would say out of my mouth, my GPA doesn't matter because I'm never going to grad school.
Whoops.
Like, I'd be like, my GPA, I'll never think twice about that after I graduate.
That's true.
And so September comes around, and this past year in the fall, I took a couple classes that were really hard, and also I took one class that was like a topic that I really enjoyed that I never had learned about. And I grew a lot of great relationships with my professors. I was like an office hours queen. I went to office hours all the time, like just started creating so many like relationships with all my professors.
Doesn't surprise me.
Like to the point where I would be in class.
Networking.
It was like networking to a T. Like I just became friends with like 4 or 5 of them. Like would go to their office regularly. They would be expecting me, like just a great time in the fall. But I remember one of my professors just kind of threw out there, like, how do you feel? Like, do you know what you're doing next year? How do you feel about doing grad school? And I was kind of like, probably not, but like, thanks for like mentioning it, but I don't think grad school is for me, and kind of just like dismissed it. And then went home, and the next like month just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I was like, and then I became really studious. Like I genuinely started loving school. Like my roommates were all seniors.
Yeah.
The classic senioritis.
Right.
I had like the opposite. I was like, I want to go to the library. I'm going to study for my test. I'm going to study for my test next week, right now.
Wow.
Like it was like a God-given like drive to study.
Sure.
Like straight, like I cannot explain it any other way than like the Lord was like, all right, Molly, you're going to really like school now because you're going to be doing it for longer. And so, because I was not that way. And so almost like started falling in love with school, took it upon myself to like study for the GRE, took the GRE, like started getting to know my professors. I didn't have to ask a single one of them for rec letters. They all came to me.
Wow.
Like I did not, like all of them were like, would approach me in class and be like, hey, Molly, like, do you have anyone that has written your rec letter? Yeah, like I would love to. And I was like, I was talking to God this morning about who would write my rec letter. So yes, thank you. And it was just like things were falling in my lap. I was then debating like, am I going to take student loans out for grad school? Like how am I going to pay for it? Like that was almost like maybe I shouldn't go because that's going to be a big deal. One of my professors approached me and was like, hey, Molly, like I hear you're going to grad school. And so this is kind of a backstory, but there's 2 programs that I was considering at Arkansas. One was a 2-year program only in Fayetteville, 1 degree, agriculture economics.
Okay.
I'm an ag girl.
Okay.
The other program was the double master's degree and agriculture economics and rural development. And the 2nd year is in Europe. So you go to Fayetteville for a year, Europe for a year. That was my dream program.
That's it.
I was like, I want to do this.
Okay.
And I knew when I applied, I'd also be applying for funding. But I wouldn't know until like later if I got funding or not, if I applied for that program. Other professor approaches me, basically throws out an opportunity to do research with him the next year. He would pay for my school, but I would have to do only in Fayetteville. It would eliminate the opportunity of going to Europe. So he approaches me, he basically says, I'll pay for grad school. And I'm like, I need that. And so I kind of debated. I was like, okay, I'll think about it. Went home, was very like honestly overwhelmed. I was like, I need money, but I feel like the Lord like has opened so many doors for this other program. Like, why wouldn't I just like go for it?
Here's
just
this
see
trust
what happens.
thing again. This thing keeps popping up in your life.
Here we are. And also backstory. Sorry, this is like
this is great.
Scattered
your
story.
Show.
It's my show, so I will do what I want.
That's right.
But when I was in high school, super randomly, I lived in Guatemala for a month. There was an intern there.
I remember that, actually.
Yes. And when I was there, the Lord told me that I was called to do missions in Europe, maybe? ? But I was in Guatemala, and I was like, why am I here? Like, I did not feel like, I felt so excluded because all the other girls were like, I love, like, this culture. I feel called to this culture. I feel called to this region. And I was like, I kind of feel called to Europe. Like, so random. But I pocketed it because I was like, nah, I'm not going to go to Europe.
Yeah.
Like, never.
Right.
I was like, doing missions in Europe would be so random.
But like God drops things in our laps that for no reason?
Nope. So I pocketed it and I was like, cool. So anyways, now, recently, so that was like 6 years ago, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. So I remember that at one point in this process, and I'm like, my brain is exploding because I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was the most random thing God could have ever told me, and I didn't have anything to do with it. And now I feel like this door is opening to where like that all makes sense now. So my professor approached me. I ended up telling him no.
You turned down the money.
I turned down funding.
And it would have fully funded it.
And I would have been great. And I had no idea. And my other professor was like, I just want you to know this program's really competitive. I don't know if you're going to get funding. I don't even know if you're going to get in.
Right. Did you tell anybody? Because probably other people would be like, Molly, you're an idiot.
So I had talked to some of my professors, but it was a very tricky conversation to have because like they're all colleagues. And it was kind of one of those things where like I told my mom, but it was more just like me and the Lord. And like it was also winter break. So I was alone in Fayetteville just working. And all my roommates were gone. So I would come home and like have the house to myself, like very like me and the Lord kind of month. But turned him down. So then I write my application. I turn it in. I get news back. I'm funded, but not for the Europe program.
Okay.
I get funding and I get accepted to just the Fayetteville program.
The first year. Okay.
So I'm kind of like excited that I got funding, but also disappointed because I'm like, oh, wow, like I really thought, like I thought that the Lord was like inching me towards this Europe program. So I'm kind of like processing like, okay, the Lord closed that door. And K-Life has also approached me asking me to do like more staff stuff the next 2 years.
Come on.
In Fayetteville. And so I'm like, maybe that's the Lord's plan. Like I'm going to be in Fayetteville so that I can do more K-Life things. Like that's kind of the avenue he's pushing me on.
Yep.
So I'm like kind of coming to terms with that. March rolls around. I'm on a Zoom call with one of my professors about doing research in Africa, like during my program. And he randomly throws out, there's a girl who hasn't accepted her offer for the Europe program yet. And if she doesn't, you're the next like shoe-in for the program. And I just remember being so caught off guard. I was like, there's still an opportunity for me to go to Europe. Like, I was like, I thought I had closed the door in my brain. I had been like, okay, God, like you said, no, I'm okay with that. We're moving forward. It's okay. And it was honestly like a thing I had to like grieve. Right. Because I had talked about it for months.
Right.
And like gotten really excited, even though knowing that it wasn't in my, like I didn't have it in my hand. So he's like, just want to let you know, like I'll let you know in the next couple weeks. So like a week later he emails me and he's like, congratulations.
Come
like
on.
This girl didn't accept it. So like you are like, you get to be in the Atlantis program. So I'm one of like 5 people in this program now.
Wow.
And I start in August and I get to go to Europe and I get to study the things that I love and it's fully funded.
Fully funded.
It's like the most insane thing that the Lord has done in my life. And it's almost one of those things where I am so excited. But if you would have told me sophomore year of college, I also think I might have made school an idol.
Sure.
In college.
Yeah.
Like, it might have gotten there because it was starting to get there in the fall, and I had to have a heart check of like, school's awesome, but like, I don't need to prioritize that over relationships and the Lord and Jesus. And like, kind of had started doing that for a little bit.
Yep.
And it was almost like, aside from me, I probably would have freaked out too and been like, I'm not going to grad school.
Right.
But also I think like the Lord was like, I see it as the Lord was allowing me to enjoy college, because I think I had a lot more fun in college than I would have if I would have been like, oh, I'm working towards this goal of grad school, which like the Lord still was like on paper, not in a demeaning way, but like, I'm a very average applicant, like average GPA, average DRE score, like average everything, but like still funded for this amazing program that I thought was like a reach program.
Right.
And like, that's the Lord opening doors and being like, okay, shoving me through that one and shoving me through that one.
That's right. But just to go back 6 years ago, he put that in your heart. He put that little dream, and you didn't even know what it was.
No.
But God was preparing you, and he was handling everything in the background.
Crazy.
I mean, that's unbelievable. You know, the other thing, and you say that you're average, and maybe you're average on academic paper, but you're not average on the paper that matters. And that's the work ethic side, the connection side, the leadership side. You are far superior on that side. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think these connections you made with these professors,
they did it. They sealed the deal.
Yeah, but that's the most important thing, because that's the people skill side. You know, a lot of people can study, but if you can't work with people, if you can't lead, that's the whole podcast, life, legacy, and leadership. You know what I'm saying?
LLL.
If you can't, LLL, that's right. If you can't lead, though, that's the most important piece, and that's what people don't understand.
And it takes a lot more time to teach that.
Yes. And it takes a lot more sacrifice, takes a lot more opportunities, takes a lot more, everything. That's not something you can learn in a book, you know, not necessarily. You can learn a concept, but that doesn't make you a leader.
Right.
And but see, I just don't think there's a lot of girls going around and meeting and working for their professors like you were. And that's where you were the top applicant. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're 1 in 5, I can just tell you your academics. That doesn't mean you don't work hard in academics. You did.
Yeah.
You know. But I think it's so important that we prioritize the right things.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
You did, and that's what made you 1 in 5.
Yeah, and having relationships with your professors, like people tell you this all the time as a freshman, but you don't want to believe them just because you're like, what? But having relationships with your professors 110% makes you stand out in the best way possible in any class. And that sounds like the most like cliche piece of advice, but it's just so true. I couldn't emphasize enough how like beneficial having a relationship that's like office hours and just like showing that you care about their course like goes a million miles.
Well, I don't know how we miss. People say it's not about what you know, it's about who you know every single time. And I don't know how long. When are we going to stop overlooking that proverb? You know, in knowing the right people. I even go back to you connecting with Emma Manser in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Emma Manser was the right people.
Yeah, she was.
You know, because she was Miss Brookhill. You know, you remember the summer where I had all the girls stand who had worked for Emma Manser in the kitchen, and the entire girls staff stood.
It's incredible.
But you recognized her influence. You recognized how amazing she was as a leader, and I don't know if you consciously do this, but you're like, I've got to get around her, right?
Yeah.
And the professor, you're like, I got to get around them, and I think so many people miss it because we think, and I don't know, maybe you did like Emma Manser, maybe you do think some of these professors that you're getting around are awesome, but I don't think that's such a junior high mindset to be like, okay, I like them, and so I want to hang out with them, and you know, instead of no, here's who's amazing, and I'm gonna get around them, right? That was the disciples. Jesus is amazing. I'm going to get around him. And I think if we'll stop making friend decisions, mentor decisions, or time decisions based on whether we like their personality or they're cool or that they make me feel good. No, I want to get around influencers. I want to get around people, and then, it's amazing how God opened those doors, but people don't understand who you surround yourself with. You've heard me say this. You're the average of the top 5 people you hang around. And I didn't come up with that. I said it, but it's so true. You start thinking of the 5 people that you hang around the most, you're the average of them, okay? And so do we want to be the average of average people, or do we want to be the average of amazing people?
It's true, yeah.
But look at what that did for you. Look at what that did for you. That's incredible.
Crazy.
That's incredible. Molly, you are the GOAT. You are amazing. You're the first, you and Claudia, the first lady LCs.
Yeah, wouldn't want to do with anyone else. Love her.
And you had that guy, Ben, Brown, and Andrew that y'all kind of carried with you.
Our backs hurt by week 7. Gosh, I know.
Y'all carried those two right there. I mean, we had Ben Brown on the podcast, and it's obvious, I mean, just that, he didn't say it.
I mean, he never would.
Yeah, he didn't admit it, but Molly and Claudia made him who he is today. I love that. Molly, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks
love
for
our
having
amazing
me.
Conversation here.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Life Legacy Leadership, that is the Molly English. It should say
with the David Pate.
It should say the definition Molly English right there. So proud of you, Molly. Can't wait to
David.
see how God continues to build your own Brook Hill as you go off and be the GOAT in Europe and everywhere else. So
awesome.
Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Me.
Yes, awesome.
Done.